What are the keys to victory for the New York Giants in their wild card game against the Minnesota Vikings? That and more with Coach Gene Clemons from Giants Country coming up next on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. My name is Patricia Traina, your host, and I am joined by Coach Gene Clemons. He's a writer at Giants Country. He writes for The Athletic. He is a real football coach, hence why we call him Coach Gene. And when it comes to breaking down strategy, Gene's your go-to guy, folks, and I'm happy to have him on the pod. Gene, it's been a while, but welcome back to the pod.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Excited to be back. Excited to talk some Giants playoff football. Remember us at the beginning of the year going, hey, why not? So it was good. It's been good. It's been a good season for the Giants. They had a tumultuous back end, but it made it a lot of fun to watch. And I'm excited for all the Giants fans to be able to see their team back in the playoffs once again.
And we certainly have a lot to talk about because the Giants are playing the Minnesota Vikings, a team that they saw in Week 16, and they just barely lost to that team. They lost on a walk-off 61-yard field goal. And, Gene, I'm going to tap into your coaching mind here to get some feedback on what the Giants can do differently, what they need to do differently to make sure they win this game. And I know you have a little secret message behind you, so we're going to start with the offense on what they need to do differently on offense.
Well, first is obvious, right? They can't turn the ball over.
Mm-hmm.
So there's two obvious, really difficult turnovers. The interception luckily didn't run into anything, but that's a possession lost when they were going well. The fumble on the possession when they were going well, and then I guess three, if we really want to count the block punt that put Minnesota in position to be able to score that touchdown in the fourth quarter. So I think those two legitimate turnovers, one where there's an obvious change of field position, they're very critical, and the Giants can't afford to lose a turnover battle to a team that has an ability to be a quick strike offense or a big play offense at any particular time. So that's the first thing. The second thing for me is they have to stick to the identity that got them to this point, which is running the football. If you actually look back at all of the games that they've lost, in games where Daniel Jones was being asked to throw the ball over 30, 35, 40 times, those are not the games that the Giants have been able to win. And so it's not just reducing his passes because you're trying to protect him per se. I don't think it's that. I think it's the identity of how this offense and defense work together. The offense needs to be able to win time of possession. The offense needs to be able to have a higher play count. They want to be the dominant with the ball in their hand because the less plays that the defense has to play, the more that they can run and fly around to the ball. And what I think we saw in that Minnesota game was the first three quarters, the defense kept holding their water. And then in the fourth quarter, the dam broke. I don't necessarily put that on the defense as much as I'm saying, hey, let's help the defense out and not have them on the field for 72 plays. That comes down to the run game and what they're able to do in the run game, not only with Saquon Barkley, but with the combination of Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones picking up those first downs via his feet on scrambles or picking up those first down on design on quarterback run plays.
Gene, when you went back and you looked at that game, did you see something that would suggest why the Giants would pass the ball so much? I mean, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the Vikings had a pretty bad pass defense. Do you think maybe they overthought it and just said, oh, okay, this is a bad pass defense, so now we're going to kind of stretch our wings a little bit and see what we can do? Or do you think they just saw something else there that just made them say, hey, we'll take the load off of Daniel, we'll take the load off of Saquon and try a different route?
Well, I think it's obviously it's twofold. They looked at the film and said this team is acceptable to the pass, but very similar to the Giants, in the run against the run. A lot of what they give up in the pass is based off of them playing a lot more softer coverage. And so I think with that, as a coordinator trying to put something together, you always try to take the easy cheese or the easy money. And they were giving up a lot of underneath the intermediate passes that they were then rallying to and tackling. And unfortunately, as an offense, the Giants, they're just not an explosive offense. So you take the chance, you say, well, if the Giants can put up 28 points on us, then we're probably going to lose. But they haven't put up 28 points on many people, so we'll take our chances that they're not able to do that versus us. And they just played the numbers. And they were able to, I think, almost lull the Giants into this comfort. There wasn't, even though they sacked Daniel Jones 3 times, it wasn't as if they were bringing a ton of pressure. Those were just individual losses on the offensive line that gave up those sacks. For the most part, Daniel Jones sat back there in that pocket pretty protected, and he just delivered the ball. If you give Daniel Jones time to sit back there and decipher what you're doing on the defense, that's when he's always been at his best. It's only when people have been able to get him flustered that he's found, some issues. And that's something that we've seen him improve on this year. But I think they let him sit back there. They let him deliver the ball to his weapons that he had out there, knowing that those weapons are not Justin Jefferson, and rallied to the ball, made tackles, and continued to let that time of possession work. But then also know they're probably going to make an offensive mistake faster than we're going to make an offensive mistake. They played their odds, they hedged their bets, and at the end they came up victorious because of it.
How much do you think the noise factor was a part of it? I mean, the players have said that place is, that particular dome stadium is really loud. So, I mean, do you think that maybe the Giants figured, okay, the passing plays are quicker to develop, and maybe that will quiet down the crowd, or was that a factor at all?
I think noise is always a factor. I don't know if it's a factor in whether or not they called more pass plays than run plays. I really just felt like they felt good about their ability to complete passes versus that team. And unfortunately, it's almost the same as if you're willing to give up some yards in the run game because eventually you're going to catch them and they're not going to be able to get 7 out of it. They may only get 3, or they may have to punt the ball. You'll give up 150, 160 rushing yards in a game if it doesn't result in touchdowns, if it doesn't result in field goals all the time. I think that was the case. I think that Minnesota was okay with giving up these intermediate and short routes and allowing those to accrue. Remember, Daniel Jones threw the ball over 40 times in the game, if I'm not mistaken. So it wasn't like they were getting large chunks of yards and just, running them off on a regular basis. And he went, 18 for 26 for 300 plus yards. It was 40 some odd passes to get to that, to those yards. So with that, it takes a lot. And bend but don't break defense is based off of, we're going to allow you to get these small chunks, but we're just waiting for you to make the mistake and get behind the chains. And once they got behind the chains, that is what stalled the offensive series for the Giants.
Were you surprised at how infrequently they used a tight end in the passing game? Daniel Bellinger, I believe, had 2 targets, caught both of them. He also had that fumble, which I don't know may have contributed to him not getting more passes, but only 2 targets for the tight end. Did that shock you?
It didn't shock me in the fact that I believe Bellinger was really kind of still getting his feet back, making sure. I think they've been easing him back since he came back from injury. So I don't know if it was necessarily that. I do know that when you fumble the ball, sometimes confidence will go away from you for a time. But I just think they were having so much success dumping it off to receivers on those short routes, on a few RPO plays. They were able to hit receivers in stride and allow them to pick up some yards. I think that was having so much success. There was not a lot of need for the play action game, which is where we've seen Daniel Bellinger be used mostly when it came to passing him the ball this year.
So just to summarize what you would do differently if you were Mike Kafka, run the ball, obviously, and how would you approach the passing aspect of it? Would you keep that the same? Would you change that part up a little bit? What approach would you take?
Well, I think you have to continue to take the easy plays. So if they're going to play a similar defense than they played last game, you have to complete passes. But I think completing those passes softens them up for the run. There's no reason for me why Saquon Barkley should leave out of this game with less than 20 carries. Like this is win or go home time. So when you have a guy who you've been able to get through the season relatively healthy, and now he's here and he's ready to roll, and you've kept him under 300 carries for the season, which I think is big because we've seen in the past that 300 carry mark usually has a deleterious effect on them next season when they come in. I think the fact that you've been able to keep those carries under 300, you've gotten Barkley to the dance, healthy enough to feel like he can really. You gotta let him go, and you've got to keep working those run plays that allow Daniel Jones to be a part of the run game. This isn't just, by the way, this this season that Daniel Jones has been doing that. Even last year with Jason Garrett, when he started implementing more of the zone read concepts, there was a lot of success for the Giants with that concept, and we started to see what Daniel Jones could be. And I even joked that if his name was DeAndre Jones, they would run that more. And I think that to the Giants offensive coaching staff's credit, they've really leaned into his athleticism this year and allowed him to be able to pull the trigger on getting out the pocket when he didn't feel comfortable, number one. And then number two, using him in the run game to make it an 11-on-11 game. So I think you still have to take those easy passes if they're going to be there, but you have to make a strong case for being dominant in the run game.
All right. Now, Gene, we're going to talk about the defense coming up in just a little bit. We're going to take a quick break here, and I'm going to get your take on what the defense can do differently, because they're going to have potentially a couple guys that they didn't have last time. We'll talk about that right after this. Hey, small business owners, if you're looking for the right people to help your small business fire on all cylinders, you need to check out LinkedIn Jobs today. Post a free job listing in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. Then add your job and the purple hiring hashtag framed to your LinkedIn profile to let everybody know that you're hiring. Over 40 million job seekers have visited LinkedIn Jobs every week and are just waiting to find opportunities with employers like your business. With LinkedIn Jobs, simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so that you can prioritize whom you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number one in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. And folks, I can speak from experience. I've been using LinkedIn Jobs to hire for my small business. And so far, I've been very pleased with the results. And I know you will be pleased with the results as well. So go ahead, post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Hey, Giant fans, if you have not tried Built Bars yet, what are you waiting for? You're depriving yourself of a delicious candy bar-like treat that has less sugar, less calories, and more protein than an actual candy bar. They're covered in real milk chocolate, and they melt in your mouth, and they taste great. Come in different flavors, both nut and nut-free variety, and they have a variety of different flavors available that rotates every so many weeks. What's also great about Built is that their bars are made with collagen protein, which provides a lot of health benefits. So eat something that tastes good and is good for you. And now you don't have to wait anymore for your box to ship from Built.com. Simply stop in at your local Walmart or Sam's Club and grab yourself a box of Built Bars, the delicious tasting treat that is sure to satisfy your sweet tooth. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. You got Patricia Traina here, and I'm with Coach Gene Clemons, who is a writer over at Giants Country, the athletic and actual football coach, and we're picking his brain about things he would do differently or would like to see the Giants do differently this time around when they play the Minnesota Vikings in Super Wildcard Weekend on Sunday. And Coach Gene, we're going to talk about the defensive side of the ball, and I think one of the biggest differences is in whom the Giants are going to have on the field on Sunday. They're going to have Xavier McKinney back. Adoree Jackson, they still don't know if they're going to have him back. Jackson continues to be limited, but they're hopeful. Azeez Ojulari, who had his ankle rolled up on in that game, should be back and ready to roll the whole time. I want to start with McKinney, if I could. Wink Martindale today said that they can call the game a little differently with Xavier McKinney on the field. In what way can they call the game differently with him?
I think he exists in so many different worlds comfortably that he really does give you a lot more flexibility as a defensive coordinator. I think out of all of the safeties, he covers the most ground at the third level. So that within itself, being able to allow him to be back and help over the top with receivers that maybe another safety was not able to get to when he's running that fade ball and he gets thrown over the top of, the cornerback gets thrown over the top of, and they think they should have help over the top. You're more comfortable with him taking people in the slot. If for some reason you have to be in a dime personnel more than you would necessarily like to, we know that the Giants tend to play a lot of dime personnel because of that's just the makeup of the best defensive players that they can put on the field. So now with him back as another guy who's good as a tackler, as another guy who's good as an intermediate coverage guy and good over the top, as a guy who can line up and play a tight end man to man, I think it really does help for them to be more successful on the defense and gives Coach Wink a few more tricks that he can bring out of his sleeve.
Now, again, they don't know if they're going to have Adoree Jackson back. And we all know that Hockenson, the tight end, destroyed them, that Justin Jefferson, the receiver, destroyed them. If they do not have Jackson back, how can they slow down Jefferson? Or do they maybe take the approach that, you know what, we'll let Jefferson have his yardage, but we'll focus more on Hockenson?
Well, no, it's actually the opposite. I actually think that they were allowing Hockenson more one-on-one matchups because they were like, let Hockenson eat. Hockenson's not going to win the game for them, but Justin Jefferson is. And the problem is that you have to shut Justin Jefferson down for the entire game. And you can't allow him to get into the fourth quarter, then all of a sudden go off. And that's what happened. They were doing a great job of keeping keeping Jefferson contained. Hockenson was having a good game, but it wasn't as if Hockenson he had them winning. And so when you take the lead back, and then in the fourth quarter, Justin Jefferson goes for, I believe, four or five catches for 50 yards, or 4 catches for 50 yards and a touchdown. That's just not going to work. You can't allow Justin Jefferson to have that big of an impact on winning time that he had. So I think that the idea of allowing the others to beat them is something that you have to go into the game with. You can't allow their best players to beat them. And that's what I think they were trying to do. And as part of the approach I think that they will take going into this game.
So again, if they don't have Jackson, do they double Jefferson? Do they get more physical with him than they did the first time around? I mean, you can't stop the guy, but you can try to slow him down. So what do you think is the best approach to slowing down Jefferson?
Well, I think you have to play games. You got to look to double them. Can you double them every single time? Maybe not, but I think you can have somebody there to make it look like a double that might take Kirk Cousins off of the throw, because he thinks he's covered. Now, here's the thing that I think that the Giants have to take a better advantage of. They can't let interceptions go through their hands, right? And we've seen a few times this year critical interceptions bounce off of defensive back's chest. Even if Adoree' back, we know Adoree' has the worst hands in the history of man as a defensive back. He's great on coverage, but hands not really there. They've got to find a way to squeeze those, and I think that is one of the reasons that having Xavier McKinney is back. If he gets a bead on the ball, he's coming up with an interception. And so even with his hand, I feel like he's going to figure out a way to pull that ball in. And so I think what they want to do is they want to play games, give them looks as if there's going to be double coverage, and force Kirk Cousins into a situation where he says, I'm just going to give my guy a chance to go up and make a play. And when he does, they have to be able to make an interception. And if you look around the times when Minnesota is lost, you can point to what are you doing Kirk Cousins throw? And I think that if they take advantage of those, what are you doing Kirk Cousins throws, that they can have success with guarding Jefferson. If you line up man to man on him, you go one-on-one the entire game, I guarantee you he's going to have another 100+ yard game. But I want fans to realize that until the fourth quarter, he was under 100 yards and he didn't have a touchdown. He had 50 yards and a touchdown in the fourth quarter. He was the impetus for why the Giants lost the game. He scored the touchdown and he grabbed a reception that set them up for the 61-yard field goal on 3rd and 11. And I'll have a piece probably tomorrow out for Giants Country where I talk about it and what I think the Giants need to do to continue to improve. But really, it comes down to their ability to get out there and put themselves in a position to not let Justin Jefferson beat them. He is enemy number one. And I'm saying that with Dalvin Cook there. And that's the crazy part about it.
Yeah, they have some weapons definitely on that offense. But let's talk about the defensive front now. That Vikings offensive line, last time they played them, banged up. They're still banged up. So if you're Coach Wink, do you go with just a straight up 4? Do you try some trickery with stunts and blitzes and stuff like that? Or do you just kind of, how do you allocate things? Do you want to, put more emphasis up front, or do you want to do more to protect the back end of the defense?
I mean, it's Coach Wink, right? So he's going to blitz at some point. He's going to bring some pressure. But I think what you'll see the Giants do is having a full complement of the 4 guys that we know that they were going into the season saying, if we've got 5 on one side and we've got Azeez on the other side, and then we have Leonard Williams and we have the Pro Bowler, All-Pro Lawrence at that nose guard, which, by the way, I'm feeling so good that I've been saying for 2 years, put this dude at nose, and they put this dude at nose, and he's been going he's going ham. I'm not saying I know what I'm talking about, but anyway, I think those 4 guys have to be counted on to hold the mail up front, to be able to hold up against the run, to be able to put some pressure on the quarterback, that they don't have to regularly feel like they have to send 5 in order to get pressure. If they can get those 4 guys to get pressure on Cousins, where they get an opportunity to drop 7, it's only going to make it better for the defense. And also, it's going to make it to when they do blitz, guys are going to come like scot-free on a blitz, because the offensive line is going to be used to 4. Now when Thibodeau makes that move inside and they think he's just trying to make an inside move so he gets help from the tackle and the guard, and that guy comes screaming off from the nickel spot, like we know that Nick that Wink likes to do a lot, when he pulls the guy off the nickel spot and sends him on that delayed blitz, or when he sends a delayed blitz from the middle and you see the A gap open up like the Red Sea, because you've got a double team Lawrence, and then you've got Williams pushing the pocket back on the other side. I just think that opens up the dynamic for the defense when they do bring a blitz, for that blitz to come wide open and get home.
All right, Coach Gene, we're going to talk about some X factors coming up, including the mood of the team, with such a big game, and some things that maybe we didn't cover in the first 2 segments. We're going to get to that right after this. Hey, Giant fans, BetOnline.net is your #1 source for football betting info this season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on all the playoff games this postseason. And BetOnline doesn't stop there. It's your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including NBA, NHL, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head on over to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the games start. Hey, Giant fans, thanks for making the Locked On Giants podcast your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you local insights that you love to the national spotlight with daily conversations on the biggest NFL stories. Locked On NFL, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. You got Patricia Traina, host, and Coach Gene Clemons of Giants Country, the Athletic, and a real football coach who's giving us some really good insight as to how the Giants can play the Minnesota Vikings a little bit better, maybe with a little bit better results on Sunday in the wild card game, because we want to keep this train rolling, don't we, Gene?
Absolutely. It's fantastic being able to write about and to talk about playoff football, as opposed to flipping on our hats and going and talking about the draft, which, by the way, we're excited to do as well, but we like this playoff stuff a little bit better.
Absolutely, especially since it's been years for that. And by the way, folks, make sure you're checking out on Giants Country. Coach Gene has an article out right now on the offensive changes, some of which we touched on in this podcast. And as we record this, he's working on a defensive one. That should be out, I believe, on Friday. We should have that up on the site. You will not want to miss it. Coach Gene did a really good job on the offensive one, and he's going to do just as good of a job on the defensive one based on the conversations we've had. Now, Gene, let's talk about some of the X factors in this game. I mentioned the crowd noise and whatnot, but the other thing and that I found interesting was something that Coach Dable said this week. And he said that playoff experience is overrated, that basically what works in week 1 should work in the playoffs. And, is that just a matter of him trying to keep the guys from getting too amped up, you think, or is there validity in that statement?
I think it's coach speak. It's coach speak. It's what you say when you don't have it, right? Mm-hmm. Like, what else are you going to say? Oh man, it's really a disadvantage that we don't have any experience in the playoffs. No, you can't say that. So you say that playoff experience is overrated, and you talk about the fact that execution is execution. It doesn't matter when it comes. But you and I both know, everybody in that locker room knows that there's a different level that comes with the playoffs. There's a different level when you're one of a few that get a chance to chase the trophy. And when you think about the fact that when the Giants have won the Super Bowl in their last recent Super Bowl runs, they've been from wild card positions. People, you've got fans and you've got everybody saying, well, why can't we do it? Why can't we get hot? We've got a similar constructed. We've got a bunch of this. So you have to diffuse some of the nerves that come with it by pushing off the fact that experience doesn't matter in the playoffs. But as we see, there's a reason why the teams who've been there before continually make it there again in these situations, is because they understand how to comport themselves in the playoffs.
When you say that, Gene, every week, obviously athletes want to win the game. So is it the knowledge that now you're in the playoffs and if you lose, you're done, that maybe factors in here? Or is there some other factor that, coaches are trying to tap into?
It's the season's over. It's a finality of a year. Nobody wants the year to be over when you've had a successful year. The only people who are looking at week 18 as thank God are people who don't have a chance. And if you're and it doesn't matter how you get there. It doesn't matter if you're the first seed or if you're the last seed. If you're in the playoffs, then you have a chance of running off 3 games in a row that gets you to the money, like that gets you to the show. And that's all that these teams are trying to do. They're trying to get hot. They want to be healthy. They want to be as spirited as they can, because they know that if you're in this position, you have an opportunity to win a championship. And every single player that's on one of these teams, whether it's the Giants or any other team, they come from a background where they have either won a championship or they've chased a championship. And so that it's almost like muscle memory. The moment you get into the playoffs, your brain just clicks. It's different. There's a different mentality to it. There's no way to quantify it. It's a qualitative design, but you see it across all sports. Doesn't matter if it's football, basketball, soccer, hockey. When you get to the playoffs, the level of play increases, the level of juice increases, and that means the level of focus has to increase.
How hard is that, though? Because, obviously guys get jacked. All right. They get excited, especially those who have not been to the playoffs before at this level. It's exciting. No matter what they say, they can sit there and say, oh, it's just another game. Well, it's not another game. So how hard is it to balance, the focus with the preparation, with knowing what's at stake and the magnitude of it?
Well, I think that's where you have to lean on your prior experience, even if your prior experience doesn't come from the NFL. You have a guy like Xavier McKinney that knows all about postseason football. He doesn't know it from the Giants, but in Alabama, they were in the hunt every single year to either win the championship or get close to winning the championship. You've got guys like Leonard Williams that come from USC back when USC had it rocking, and he understands that level of intensity. You have a bunch of players who have won Pac-12 titles, who've won ACC titles, who've won ACC titles, all over the place. They've been in position where a championship was within reach, within sight, and they can harken back to that experience to lean on, to say, hey, this is how I raised my game this week. Maybe it's an extra hour in the film room. Maybe it's an extra hour in the training room. Maybe it's an extra hour in the weight room. Whatever it might be, an extra hour out on the field just to clean up some things. But you do just that little bit more when you know if we don't get it done this week, we're packing up that locker room.
Finally, Gene, if you had to point to one X factor that you think is going to make the biggest difference in the outcome of this game, something we haven't talked about, What are you thinking?
Something we haven't talked about. If there's an X factor of something that we haven't talked about, I think it's Darius Slayton. I
Okay.
think Darius Slayton, like, he's not getting his flowers for this season enough. And I feel like I'm the only person that continues to like bang the Darius Slayton drum, but I'm going to do it once again. This is a man that everyone had left for dead in New York. And all he's done is continue to do his job to the best of his ability. He's shown why he flashed the potential in year 1 and year 2 to be a legitimate number 2 receiver. Now he's in a position because of injury where he's asked to do more, but he's still not being targeted. But he's the guy. He's their big play guy in the receiving game. If he can catch a lane and grab a ball and go a 45 or 50, he's the only one that's out there as a receiver, other than maybe Richie James, but James is going to do it in a different way. He's the only one that could take the top off. He's the only one that can catch it and go the distance with it. He can be an X factor, whether it's 1 or 2 plays where he's able to change field position drastically. I don't even think it necessarily has to be a touchdown, but I think it's a play that can change field position drastically that can really do wonders for this offense and allow them to continue to stay on track with getting the ball in the end zone, not just kicking field goals.
And then finally, Gene, how are you feeling about this weekend's game?
I think that this is the best matchup that the Giants could have received, right? At some point, we've got to put some expectations on this team. We can't just keep saying everything is gravy, right? So if we're saying that Daniel Jones has had his best year ever and people are talking about him, with contract extensions that make zero sense to me, but go right ahead. Well, this is a team that you should have beaten in week 16. Regardless of what we say, we don't turn the ball over. We don't. Hey, look, we should have beat this team in week 16. So now you have them again in the exact same environment that you had them in week 16. It's not like you played them at home and now you got to go on the road and see them. You were already in there. You know what that crowd is like. You know that it's a sound box. Can you do the little things? Just those little tweaks. Can somebody put a performance together that can carry a team, that gets them to the next round? And I believe that this is the matchup out of all the matchups that the Giants could have received in the first round. This is the one that they're going, we got a real legitimate shot of being around next week. And so I'm excited to see it. I know that the Giants fans are excited to see it. I know that the players and the coaching staff are excited to get out there and show what they can do on the national stage. So we'll all watch and we'll have our fingers crossed and everything else that we can cross to make sure that we're still back here next week talking again.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, it's been a long time coming, 6 years since this team has been to the playoffs, and it is a lot of fun talking about playoff football as opposed to starting draft coverage and free agency coverage and all the stuff we normally have been doing these last several years, which is why I'm behind on all this stuff. But, I'm fine with that. We'll get caught up and we'll catch up to all that stuff eventually, but hopefully not for another several weeks yet. But Gene, great stuff. Appreciate you coming on and sharing your expertise and your knowledge. Giant fans, make sure you check him out. He's on Giants Country doing some great stuff over there. He's on The Athletic. He's got his own podcast, Talk Spicy, every Monday. Drops a new episode. Check that out. And Giant fans, we will see you again. We've got Locked On Giants live with Tana and the dog and yours truly. So that will be Friday night. We hope you'll swing by. That'll be at 7:30. And we'll keep bringing you coverage all weekend long of the New York Giants postseason coverage. And till then, everybody, we will catch you later.